Here's what you need to assemble a total composites camber body. First, you need methyl hydrate to clean all the parts. You need a sanding block to scuff all the parts. You need caulking guns, either a high quality manual one or a battery operated one. We prefer the Milwaukee one, readily available at Home Depot, super easy to use. We also recommend some suction cups. Get the heavy duty ones because you don't want to have the parts slide on you, right? It has to be a secure grip. So what we also recommend is some type of squeegee. We're getting these ones out of Germany, but you may be lucky with your local hardware store too. You need a measuring tape, some pencils, just some measuring tools, X-Acto knife, Fein multimaster, or any other oscillating tool. It means a tool that doesn't spin. These ones, they just oscillate and really safe to use. And for the Fein multimaster, you can get different attachments. Like we have special cutting tools that are designed to cut fiberglass products that don't dull as fast as the other ones. You need a cordless drill, small screws. We recommend number 6 by 5/8 length wood screws. You will see later on during the assembly process what they are good for. What else do we have? Some paper towels, to do the wipe and stuff. And then later on, when you have to glue, squeeze out, and you have to clean your tools and your hands maybe even too, use a strong dish soap to water solution and a cheap spray bottle. Another big helper during the assembly process is having a plywood jig. It doesn't have to be any high-end fancy plywood. Anything you have kicking around will do the trick. The most important part is that the plywood sheet is cut perfectly in a 90-degree angle, and that you have a couple of holes cut out for your clamps and also clearance for the extrusions inside the camber body. You will see later on why this is important, but as you can see, not fancy, but a huge help during the assembly process to keep pieces in the perfect position while the glue is drying. Let's talk about the actual panels that come with your camber kit. Our floor panel is 2 inches thick or 50 millimeters, built up of a fiberglass skin on the underside to protect it from flying rocks and stuff from the environment. And then we have an 1/8 of an inch marine grade plywood, polyurethane foam core, a 5/8 marine plywood for the load bearing, and then another sheet of fiberglass on top, and that actually makes that whole sandwich and whole panel very waterproof and durable later on when everything is assembled. Because you have to imagine, after the extrusion is put in place, that exposed edge is all sealed off, so there's no way any water or so can get in. Okay, so here in the floor panel you see our mounting points. The flat steel is meant to be drilled and tapped from underneath through your subframe or flatbed, whatever system you have, and then you put your bolt through the subframe into the floor panel, and everything will be tied together very solidly without a thermal transfer, because a lot of people think we have to actually bolt through the floor, which is a very bad idea because you would get a lot of condensation on the inside of the camper. Let's talk about the rear wall on your camper. A lot of people ask us if they can mount a spare tire on the rear wall or some jerry cans, and yes, of course you can. The one thing to remember is that you can't just bolt a single tire with a couple of bolts straight onto one spot, because you would create a point load. So to carry a lot of weight on the rear wall, we recommend that you build a big rack system, basically like a roof rack, but over a bigger area on your truck. We have tons of pictures of that on our website if you want to check that out for reference. So to make that happen, we have the same as in the floor panel. We have some thermal transfer free fiberglass tubes with the flat steel and some insulation in there, and you just drill and tap from the outside where you need to put your bolts in. Okay, let's talk about the front wall. The front walls are usually pretty straightforward. There's no internal structure in there. So it's pretty much just the 2 fiberglass skins and the foam core, and that's pretty much it. Just watch for the label, what's up and down and inside outside, and you should be totally fine. So with the roof panel, you probably have to do a little bit more prep work than with the other panels, because a lot of people like to pre-wire for puck lights, for roof vents, and so on. And for that reason, we have on a couple of spots in the roof, we have wire chasers. Those are PVC tubes. The long way of the roof panel, again, you will see them in the production drawings, and you can also move them around to whichever place you find them more convenient. We think we found the proper locations for them that work for most people, but again, we can customize that, no problem. And then before you do the assembly, we just highly recommend that you run all the wires like we have here, the ends already in there for the marker lights. You may want to prepare before you put everything together. That just saves you a lot of work at the end. And I would say this is probably the pre-wiring and pre-locating everything is what takes the most time during the whole assembly process. For the actual assembly, there are a couple of tricks that would make your life a lot easier down the road. Let me show you. So you first do a dry fit. Everything you got needs to be dry fitted first, so you know that everything fits, and it also teaches you at the same time where to handle the panels, how to hold on to it, what you need to do in terms of maybe additional tools or other helpers, a sealing crane, forklift, whatever. Just go through the dry run and fit it together without the glue, and it makes your life a lot easier. And for that, we're gonna drill some holes. So the next step is during the dry fitting, you slide the extrusions into place. Make sure you put the extrusions in the right place, in the right orientation. So use your drawings as your reference and actually see which way they need to be turned. So the next step is you place some holes in a location, preferably in the channel where the panels will go. Put some holes in there for screws. That way everything is being held in place with the screws, and it also helps you later on, once you have the glue applied, to get the extrusion into the exact same spot as he has it before, because the glue sometimes adds just a little bit more material thickness, and it makes it hard to get it exactly in the same spot. But with the screws, no big deal. Let me show you how it's done. And you do this every 2-3 feet. So now that you have all the extrusions dry fitted, you can take the screws back out. Just go on the inside edge of your extrusion with a pencil. You pull it off and you see exactly your glue surface. So now use an 80 or 60 grit sanding block and just scuff the surface where the glue joint will happen. So next, use methyl hydrate. Soak a rag and wipe just in one direction. And you can see there is still dust on there. Use the opposite side of the rag. Do it again till you have a clean rag. It's really important that all the dust and all the grease is removed. Do it on each glue surface. Don't forget the underside of the floor panel. With the glue application, let's just assume we already have glue in the extrusions, plenty of it, and we would just slide the extrusion on like this without having any glue on the panel. As you can see, through that motion, the edge of the floor panel would just peel all the glue back, and we would pretty much have nothing here at the front. So it would be a dry glue spot. We definitely want to avoid that, and I'm gonna show you now in the next segment how to apply the glue. This is really important. Okay, so it's important to know with the glue, it's a polyurethane glue. That means it cures with moisture in the air. So if you're in a really dry climate, the curing time is probably a bit longer than in a hot, humid climate. So just keep this in mind. On average, the open time, that means the workable time with the glue, is roughly about 25 minutes. So in some cases, you really have to move fast before the glue starts setting. If you see that the glue already formed a skin on top of each other, scrape it off, start from scratch, because you do not want to compromise the glue bond. So now when you push the extrusions on, keep in mind that you have a lot more friction right now to push the extrusions on, and this is actually when those screw holes come into play, because this is just a short distance right now, but if you have, let's say, a 16 or 20 foot length, there could be some waviness in there, right? So you have to make sure everything is pushed in place. That's also when the pencil lines come into play. And then you put your screws in, and so now we're going to clean up the glue that was squeezed out, and you want to see excess glue to come out, right? Because that means you have enough glue in the glue joints. We use the spray bottle with soap and water, put it on there, but keep in mind, wherever the soap water will touch the surface, glue will not stick to it anymore. It's really important that you clean all the soap off with alcohol at a later point. So then you use your jig and you just go along and peel it off. And that's really all you need to do. I usually use another rag just to soak up the water and soap, and you're done. That's all the cleanup you need to do for now. We have the side extrusions on, the extrusion for the front wall, but we are leaving the rear wall off because the rear wall is gonna go on last. So the first panel we're gonna put in place is the front wall. The front wall will be held upright in a 90-degree angle with a simple plywood jig. Just simply clamped to the extrusion or to the floor panel, whatever makes the most sense for you in terms of available clamps. You will see in a moment how we're gonna tighten this all up. So as you can see, we have glue on the bottom edge, and if you now imagine this panel being a little bit bigger, right, as a full-size camper front wall, it's really hard to handle this without getting the glue all over you. So this is when the suction cups come in handy, and I recommend one on the inside, outside, and then you just lift the panel up and then you drop it into your extrusion. Push it all the way down. Remember, there is some friction on there because of the glue. So you have your plywood jig. This is when those holes come into play. Clamp it here and hold the panel in place. Don't crank it too much because all you do is pretty much just compressing the foam core, so you don't want to do that. We have to be a bit more careful when we use our soap spray, because we don't want to get the soap spray in here where we still have to do more glue ups today. So instead of spraying it onto the big surface, we're just gonna spray our putty knife with the soap solution and do the cleanup like this. It works the same way, it's maybe a bit messier, but it's really not bad. It's something you will get a hang of as you move along. So now we're gonna clean up the outside joint. Make sure you're not spraying the soap on glue surfaces you're going to use in a couple of minutes. So I would just start a little bit further here. Gonna grab my cardboard waste contraption and get this in here. And as you can see, the glue comes off very easy. And even if you have a little bit of a glue fall down like I do here, it's not the end of the world, because it cleans up very easy when it's dry, like those little droplets here, you don't really have to worry about them. Just get rid of the big goops. We're gonna apply the glue for the front vertical extrusions in preparation for the sidewall. A really important point when you apply the glue, only apply glue to pieces you're gonna use in the near future. Don't work too far ahead. In the extrusion, make sure you're all the way to the front, at the bottom, and at the top. And you can look down this gap to actually see if you're all the way in contact. And you can also look into this gap a little bit and inside and make sure you're all together. Use a clamp if you can. If not, have a person push from the back, one from the front, and then secure everything with a piece of packing tape. Works really well. Put a couple of strips here and it will hold it in place till the glue is dry. Try to line it up as good as we can. And getting to the roof, which is most likely the biggest piece you have to put on your camper body, and it's also a bit high up, so it's a bit more difficult to do. So here's a couple of tricks. Pre-install the extrusions on the roof, glue it on. You can do this a day before, for example. Lift it on there from the side with a forklift or with a couple of people. You walk it on from behind, whatever you find more practical, no big deal. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna lift it up, pull those 2x4s, miniature 2x4s out, drop down one end, lift this end up, and pull this piece of wood out too. So you can do this all from standing on the inside, right? You just need one person on each corner, lifting it up, another person outside is pulling out the 2x4s, and you drop it down. So it's we have a stainless steel corner cap and we have an aluminum powder coated cap. This one is a lot lighter. A lot of people like the black color, but I want to give you an option and explain both methods right now. If you're dealing with the corner cap or any type of blank metal, if you want to glue it to the box, you have to use a primer. We recommend the Sika 205 primer. Readily available all over North America. You have to use it to make the glue stick to the metal. If you use or opt for the powder coated aluminum caps, you have to really rough sand the interior, the glue surfaces, the powder coat, otherwise the glue will not stick. And then of course you still have to clean it with alcohol to get rid of all the dust and stuff. So here's another trick. To make sure you have those corner caps on straight and they look nice at the end. Use a straight edge, whatever you have, but it has to be straight obviously. Put it on one of those edges and make sure it's parallel to the extrusion. You know, you can do this all the way around and make sure it all lines up and it looks straight. So just look down that line and see what it looks like. So after you have the camber body assembled, it's really important that you seal off all the joints between the panel and the extrusions to make it weatherproof. Really easy to do. So use a methyl hydrate like you used before to clean the panels, a clean rag, and just clean off any dust or any soap residue you had from the cleanup effort before. And that's really all you need to do to prepare the panels for this next step. So with our 225 adhesive sealant, you now apply a bead of caulking around all the seams. This is also possible to be done with black caulking, but it's a bit more messy just to be warm. But it looks really nice at the end. So like before, we need a strong soap and water solution in a spray bottle, piece of cardboard, really handy, and a type of squeegee. You can use an old credit card if you really want to, whatever works for you, but these ones give you a really nice finish. So you start spraying the soap on all the caulking. Just remember, wherever the soap hits, the glue will not stick anymore. And then you just apply the squeegee and you pull along. You see it's a bit messy because the soap is dripping down. Don't worry if you have a couple of glue smudges somewhere, just wait till it's dry and you can easily pick it up. And that's it, that's how you seal the outside of your camper. Alright, let's seal off the roof. Again, we're using the methyl hydrate and a rag to wipe all the seams we want to clean, we want to seal off, clean those up. Make sure all the dust, everything is off it. And then we're just gonna let it dry for a couple of minutes to make sure that there's no residue of any liquid on those seals. A really generous bead of sealant on there. And for that purpose, I cut off the tip of the caulking gun into a big opening. This will really allow for a big application. And don't forget, we still go over it in a little bit and smoothen this all out. So don't panic if it doesn't look super pretty right at this moment. Just keep in mind that you have roughly half an hour to work with the sealant to smoothen it out and to make it look pretty. You may have to do this in stages. I'm just gonna do this whole area now. Our adhesive is considered non-toxic, so there's no toxic chemicals in there, right, that would really harm your skin and stuff. So, and it also gives you a better feeling if you don't use a glove. So you can leave it on, nothing wrong. I decided to take it off. So you spray everything with the soap solution again. Use a piece of cardboard just to wipe your fingers off, and then get your finger wet with the soap solution and you just push it on. You want to have a really nice bead on there that overlaps the extrusion and the joint, because when you have a closer look, there's a little step in here between the roof and the extrusion, and this is where rainwater would collect
and you want to make sure that this is a really tight seal. It's not going to be as pretty as the seal along the side, but it's the roof, and I think it doesn't really matter that much to have a super pretty seal because it's on the roof and nobody will ever see it. I think it's more important to have a waterproof seal than one that looks pretty and gives you trouble down the road. And I'm just gonna finish this little area off, and I'm gonna grab my squeegee again and take this one off. I mean, we don't have to have big blobs up there because that really doesn't look ugly, there's no question about it. But just like that, it comes off, looks half decent, and we move on to the next area. And just make sure you really push it in the corners, right? So that you have a tight seal. It's really important. And if you want, you can tape this off beforehand if you really want to. I don't really think it's really necessary. The main focus here is that you get it waterproof, and as you can see, there could be a little bit of smear, but you just go over it again and it smoothens out fairly easy.